Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking the incredibly wild, century-long history of the greatest sporting event on the planet. Going through these sources, I realized the story of the World Cup is honestly even crazier than you might imagine. Over the years, 79 different nations have taken part, and it's a saga that is literally overflowing with deep controversy, massive global politics, sheer passion, and just an undeniable love for the beautiful game. But to really understand the sheer weight of what we're talking about today, we got to start with this staggering number, 5 billion. In the last tournament alone, over 5 billion people tuned in to watch. To put that into perspective, that is more than 60% of the entire human population on Earth. It's almost hard to wrap your head around, right? But getting to this insane point of global domination absolutely did not happen overnight. Okay, let's dive into this. To make sense of this massive history, we're going to break our timeline down into 5 distinct eras. The birth of a dream, the golden age of legends, expansion, chaos and tragedy, the modern tech spectacle, and finally, the future of football. Right, starting off with part 1, the birth of a dream. Looking back, it's actually incredible to see just how fragile the initial concept of a global football tournament really was. It was so close to never happening at all. So the story actually begins long before that first whistle. Back in 1914, FIFA basically just recognized the Olympics as the Football World Championship, and it stayed that way for a while, until 1928, when FIFA president Jules Rimet had this golden idea: let's do a completely independent international tournament. Fast forward just 2 quick years to 1930, and the very first World Cup officially kicked off in Uruguay. But actually getting those teams to the pitch? Complete logistical nightmare. It's playfully absurd to contrast today's mega event with those early hurdles. That first 1930 tournament, it only had 13 teams. European nations were deep in a financial crisis, and taking a massive boat all the way to South America was just too expensive, which led to widespread boycotts. And the hurdles kind of just got stranger from there, like India withdrawing in 1950 because they were strictly told they couldn't play barefoot. And of course, the biggest disruption of all was the massive 12-year pause in the tournament due to the outbreak of World War II. Well, the tournament did survive. Which brings us to Section 2, the Golden Age of Legends. Spanning the 1950s and 60s, this is the era where emerging tech and larger-than-life superstars forever changed the game. A real game changer happened right here in 1954. The World Cup hosted in Switzerland was the very first to be properly televised. This was the spark. Suddenly, you didn't have to literally be sitting in the stadium. Fans could tune in from all over the planet. The tournament went from being just an international sporting event into a true global phenomenon, spreading like wildfire and capturing the imaginations of millions. And those millions of people watching on their TVs, they were treated to some of the absolute greatest individual performances in history. Just look at these staggering stats. You've got Francis Just Fontaine, who scored 13 goals in a single tournament. That's a record that still hasn't been broken. Then there's Pelé, making his debut at just 17 years old, scoring in a final and going on to win an unmatched 3 World Cup trophies. And right alongside him was Mario Zagallo, making history as the first person ever to win the whole shebang, as both a player and later as a coach. But, it wasn't all just beautiful football and brilliant goals. Because as the stakes got higher, so did the brutality. This era saw a really dark rise in highly defensive, genuinely violent tactics. The absolute peak of this was the 1962 match between Chile and Italy. It's notoriously remembered as the Battle of Santiago. Fueled by a ton of nasty press in the build-up, the players basically spent the entire match deliberately trying to hurt each other. It ended with 2 red cards for Italy, and the players actually had to be escorted off the pitch by police just to make sure they got out safely. That wild intensity naturally leads us right into Section 3, expansion, chaos, and tragedy. As the tournament grew at lightning speed, it brought unprecedented drama, both on and off the pitch. And this brilliantly illustrates that explosive structural growth over the decades. We started with a tiny 13-team roster in 1930. By 1982, they bumped it to 24 teams to give more nations a fighting chance. By 1998, we hit the 32-team format most of us know today. This massive expansion meant way more diverse play styles, way more upsets, and fundamentally, just a lot more opportunity for chaos. Now, maybe no single player embodied the dual nature of this chaotic era better than Argentina's Diego Maradona during the 1986 quarterfinals against England.
On one side, you have the infamous Hand of God, which was a clear, unpunished instance of cheating where he literally punched the ball into the net. But in that exact same game, you have what is universally called the goal of the century, where he magically dribbled past 5 English players starting all the way from the halfway line. It is sheer brilliance sitting right alongside blatant rule breaking.
And the scandals definitely didn't stop there. Get this. In 1990, Chilean goalkeeper Roberto Rojas literally cut himself with a hidden blade, pretending he'd been hit by a flare thrown by Brazilian fans just to try and get Brazil disqualified. He was caught by a photographer and banned for life. That same 1990 tournament somehow ended up being the lowest scoring one ever. Yet, despite the low scores and bizarre controversies, the popularity just kept booming. By 1994, the USA hosted, and it remains the highest attended World Cup in history, packing 3.6 million spectators into the stadiums.
However, that 1994 tournament is also tied to the absolute darkest day in the history of the sport. Colombia had entered the World Cup with a golden generation of players, and they carried so much hope for a nation that was deeply struggling with cartel violence at the time. Tragically, the Colombian captain, Andrés Escobar, accidentally scored an own goal during the group stages, which contributed to his team's early elimination. After returning home, he was shot and killed. While it was alleged to be retaliation from cartels over lost gambling money, the loss of Escobar is just a profound, heartbreaking tragedy that completely shocked the world.
Moving forward from those turbulent times, we arrive at Section 4, the modern tech spectacle. This is the World Cup as we know it today, where extreme on-pitch drama directly collides with high-end tech. But hey, before the technology fully took over, the players were still providing absolute carnage. The 2006 tournament in Germany was remarkably brutal. It set a jaw-dropping record with 345 total yellow cards. We had the Battle of Nuremberg between Portugal and the Netherlands, featuring 4 red cards in a single match. And obviously, the whole thing climaxed in the final, where French legend Zinedine Zidane shockingly headbutted Italy's Marco Materazzi in extra time. A red card in front of the entire world to end his international career. Unbelievable. 4 years later in South Africa, it actually wasn't a player causing the drama. It was the ball itself. Enter the Jabulani. This notoriously unpredictable, highly erratic football was straight up dubbed the ball from hell. Players universally despised it because of how wildly it moved in the air. But us viewers, we absolutely loved it. The totally unpredictable nature of the Jabulani just added another fantastic layer of chaos to the whole event. Eventually, though, FIFA had to rein things in, which sparked the tech revolution. In 2014, goal line technology was introduced, finally erasing human error on those really close goals. Then, in 2018, the Video Assistant Referee, or VAR, made its grand debut. By leaning into new technology to review plays, the sport fundamentally modernized its officiating, which, as you might guess, immediately resulted in a record number of penalty kicks being awarded. All of this evolution totally culminated in the historic 2022 World Cup in Qatar. It delivered what many argue is the greatest final football has ever seen. A completely breathless 3-3 thriller pitting the reigning champion Kylian Mbappé, who scored a hat-trick for France, against the veteran Lionel Messi. In the end, Argentina won out on penalties, cementing Messi's legendary status as he finally lifted the trophy, while simultaneously passing the torch to the brilliant young Mbappé. So, what does this all mean for tomorrow? That brings us to Section 5, the future of football and the dawn of a completely new era. The tournament is on the brink of a massive structural transformation. Just look at the staggering logistics laid out for the 2026 format. The tournament is going to be shared across 3 massive host nations, the USA, Mexico, and Canada. But the real shocker is the expansion to 48 teams. Remember that tiny little 13-team tournament we started with back in 1930? Now we're looking at 12 groups of 4, all feeding into a gigantic 32-team knockout stage. That means more nations, more games, and for sure, vastly more drama. Which leaves us with this final, incredibly thrilling question. Who is going to conquer the 48-team era? Will it be the emerging young squads from Brazil? Will Mbappé lead France back to glory? Or are we going to see a completely unexpected underdog rise up to navigate this massive new gauntlet? If the history of the World Cup shows us anything, it's that absolutely anything is possible. I really hope this explainer gave you a fantastic new perspective on how this beautiful game has evolved over the last century. Keep wondering, keep learning, and we will see you next time.